Greetings adventurers, and welcome to the Loot Goblin Marketplace. Whenever a player starts to use charm spells or persuasion rolls to try and get people to roleplay a situation they're not comfortable with, the session needs to come to a grinding halt. I know that kills the session's momentum, but you always want to stop the behavior in the moment instead of 5 sessions down the road when everyone is already miserable and checked out. Talking about expectations surrounding roleplay before the campaign begins is always a good idea, but you aren't going to predict every roleplay situation before it happens. Mattering on the table, people will have very different ideas about how they want to handle romance. Call me a prude, but if you keep trying to make me describe things after I already said things fade to black, you aren't getting invited back to the table. Everyone else here wants to finish the mega dungeon. I don't care if you finish. Today's treasure was submitted at lootgoblinstories@gmail.com and goes by the name When a Catboy's Obsession Kills Off a Years Old Campaign. Hey Loot Goblin, I've been following for a couple years ever since I was introduced to the world of D&D. Listening to other people's horror stories in D&D made me think that they were rare occurrences. Boy oh boy was I wrong. That or I just have horrendous luck, because after this main incident, I haven't been able to get on a campaign. As a brief trigger warning, this story deals with some, let's just call it non-consensual situations that happen in and out of game, which I will use careful wording so everyone can understand without explicitly telling them. Let me just say I definitely appreciate that. So for context, I live in a small Latin American country, which has about 10% of its population knowing English. So excuse me if I misspell anything. A small country plus not many English speakers plus not a well-developed nerd culture equals finding a D&D campaign is almost as rare as finding a shiny Pokemon. Anyways, with that paragraph out of the way, there was this friend I met at work who was super kind and knowledgeable in all sorts of fiction, and then he asked me to play some Dungeons and Dragons with him. At first, I rejected the invitation because I felt like joining such a long-running campaign of 5 years as a beginner could lead to me derailing it out of my own incompetence. Months passed, and another friend from high school convinced me into joining a one-shot campaign he was organizing, in which I played a level 5 halfling arcane trickster. The campaign evolved into a 3-shot because the decisions the party took were very enticing to the dungeon master, to the point he extended it. Needless to say, my character was pretty enjoyable to play, and left a very good impression on the mechanics of the game. Me being into reading and theory crafting led me to constantly thinking about new D&D builds that I could use in the campaign. I ended up telling my friend about that one-shot because I had such a fun time playing in it. He then asked me to join his campaign, which I happily accepted. With some meager experience, I took the challenge of creating my next character. I decided to try the Warlock class, since a previous player from the 3-shot was having the time of her life playing as one, mainly spamming Eldritch Blast and hitting some booming blades with her Hexblade. The DM, however, suggested that I don't use an overpowered class like the Hexblade. After reading about the Hexblade in the rulebook and playing some of it on Baldur's Gate 3, I understood and changed the subclass. So I decided to go with a little more, I guess, unorthodox approach to a genie warlock. You see, in the Dungeon Master's world lore, an entire 50-page lore book he made me read, drows and half-drows were actively hunted down due to them having established some sort of partnership with several elemental realms, which included genies, to the point that some newborns were given elemental stones at birth to enhance their abilities. My character was originally a half-drow, let's call him Jack, with one such stone containing an equally newborn genie. At the time he was born, the drow territory was being racially cleansed because they were becoming a liability to the rest of the races. The DM asked for Jack to be an albino, and his mother, in an attempt to save him, sheared his ears into a humanesque shape to pass him off as a newborn human. The mother gets killed by a female paladin. The paladin takes Jack, thinking it is a kidnapped human, and decides to raise him. So, to Jack's knowledge, he is just a really talented human guy. Jack becomes a wizard that becomes obsessed with learning all sorts of magic, often using these simple spells as party tricks. Jack eventually decides to use his power to decipher some dubious scrolls that turn his now teenage genie into a patron. As a result, he also loses his wizard abilities and becomes a full warlock. Since his powers are now of an otherworldly nature, he tries to pass them off as new party tricks, usually disguising his Eldritch Blasts as finger-flicking collecting stones and other things, Jack ends up joining a party exploring a dungeon. The names are changed for the sake of anonymity. There's Eric, the wild magic sorcerer kobold, Mark, the human shotgun-wielding arcane archer fighter, and then there's Catboy, a tabaxi, I think, I don't remember, that's a good-aligned whispers bard. I know the title does give away who the problem player is here, but I really like that it's the only one where the alignment is pointed out. You just know they're about to do some heinous stuff. So the first 5 sessions went awesome. The players, out of character, loved the idea of how I turned into a warlock by mistake. Mark was glad to have another human in the party. Eric was suspicious of Jack's magic, but was fine with it as long as Jack didn't finger flick stones towards him. And Catboy was very glad to have such a handsome man added to the team. Ugh. He was constantly attempting to seduce Jack into a relationship. Later on, he even tried to do some hypnosis/suggestion spells to get Jack to succumb to Catboy's horny desires. Luckily for my character, he had some ridiculously good bonuses on saves, so we never had to go through any of that. But that started to make me suspicious of the guy. Barring the weird interactions that left the entire Discord call in awkward silence, with the occasional tired sigh from Eric or Mark, the Water Genie Warlock was an awesome addition to the party because it added mystery story-wise, and excellent crowd control gameplay-wise, because Eric was very DPS focused. Now at this point, I must clarify that Catboy was DM's boyfriend. They lived together at this point, and at times they did flirt with each other. However, props to the DM, he was extremely impartial and unbiased. There was absolutely zero preferential treatment to Catboy, which from all the horror stories you read is a rare case. One thing, however, is that Catboy wanted to add one of his friends to the campaign, and the DM had been neglecting the idea because with me being added, he felt like adding another player might make the sessions too slow, which in hindsight he was kinda right. On top of that, the person he was trying to bring and play didn't have a single clue of what Dungeons and Dragons was, so to the DM, having 2 noobs on the campaign could spell trouble. He was very vocal about it too. A couple weeks go by, and we reach a sort of mid-boss stage in the dungeon. We decide to stop the session after we fight the boss, because Eric nuked the battlefield with some sort of dual cast fire spell. It wasn't Fireball, but I don't remember what it was. But as a result, Wild Magic turned him into a potted plant for the next day, which is honestly hilarious. Now, one thing the DM liked to do after sessions is a quick 20 to 30 minute next session planning/feedback chat in which we discuss what happened, how fun X or Y thing was, and what we would do next. It was a weekly campaign. This time, however, Catboy decided to drop an ultimatum, unintentionally at the time, because he thought he muted himself on the call. To the Dungeon Master, he said, "If you don't bring Jamie next week to the session, I'll cut the relationship." Eric, being the most vocal of our group, starts saying, "Whoa there, buddy. Isn't that like super toxic to say? What do you mean by that? DM has been clear that it'd be hard for them. Why don't you?" And then the Dungeon Master left the call. Eric, Mark, and I stood in silence for a solid 30 seconds before I coughed up and said, "Wow, that was something, wasn't it?" Mark agreed, said goodbye, and left the call clearly disturbed. Then Eric sighed, "I swear, man, Catboy can get so creepy sometimes. Please don't take this weird, okay? I don't want to lose yet another player to this weirdo." Hearing that caught my attention, so I asked, "What do you mean by that? 5 people have left the campaign, 2 girls and 3 guys, all because Catboy's character basically wants to have sex with them, and he often succeeds through persuasion rolls." I then finally realized just how much of a gigantic red flag Catboy is. I decided that I better save some inspiration points just in case he succeeds. Speechless, I just say, "Noted. Thanks for telling me, man. Good night." I know earlier the author said that it didn't seem like he shows favoritism, but that right there is the perfect example of favoritism. Catboy gets to do whatever he wants, make people uncomfortable, have them leave the game table, and because you know he's gonna let him roll anyways, you're saving your inspiration points not for the game, but instead not to be assaulted. So I get that there was probably a lot at the game table the Dungeon Master was doing right, but he was still clearly playing favorites. If someone in one of my campaigns made 5 people leave over time, time because they're uncomfortable with them specifically, they would need a very compelling argument on why I shouldn't kick them from the table. The whole table just experienced him give an ultimatum too. He thought he was muted. There's a good chance that happens all the time. This is just the first time he forgot to mute himself, so make sure to keep that in mind as well. Next week, no campaign. The DM is sick, Catboy said. Me being his coworker and seeing him perfectly fine earlier that day, decided not to aggravate the situation by calling BS on him. Next week, the same. I think he got the flu, but he is recovering. At work, the DM tried to play it off, but he was clearly bothered by something. So the day prior to the next session, I asked him and he spilled the beans. Sorry man, I've been busy working on Catboy's friend's character, let's call her Anna, and she has been a little difficult. Couple that with my boyfriend's insistence, and yeah, I'm tired, boss. I'd definitely be tired of the Catboy too. He asked me to keep my mouth shut though because Eric via direct messages has been constantly asking the DM when the hell is the next session. I understood and promised him silence. Surprisingly, the next day there was a session, and Anna's character, a male gunslinger human, joined the party. In and out of character, Eric was suspicious of Anna. Out of character, Anna was a hilarious girl, timid as hell, had unintentionally funny remarks, crazy creative, she was an awesome person, and her character was similar to herself, a timid guy who carried his grandfather's rifle enacting the family business of assassin/bounty hunter, who in dangerous situations basically swap personalities into that of a highly competent killer. However, Catboy was not too pleased that Anna's character was basically the center of attention. It's what you wanted, dude, and was constantly heard sighing, and from the way he spoke, you could picture him rolling his eyes anytime he had to speak to anyone that wasn't Anna. A couple weeks go by and we reached the big boss of the dungeon, a gunslinger Mark and Eric had been hunting for years. Literally the big bad evil guy of the whole campaign that keeps slipping away. The fight starts, the boss begins shooting at all of us. Now one thing that the DM put into the world is that there's some eldritch artifacts that when people find them, and if they are chosen worthy by the artifact, can attune to them and give them powers. Eric and Mark had one. The big bad evil guy was in this dungeon looking for his sixth. I won't bore you with the details of the fight, except for two things. My character, in a desperate attempt to not let the big bad evil guy escape from Mark and Anna's next heavily enhanced shots, decided to sacrifice his secret and cast Hunger of Hadar to have otherworldly limbs hold him in place. The shots were so good, the Dungeon Master actually had to re-roll a couple of things so the big bad evil guy wouldn't outright die there. In exchange, he let go of the sixth artifact, which my character caught with Mage Hand, and flung it to Anna, so they could get it away from the big bad evil guy. At this point, Catboy activates a trap that closes a massive stone door in front of him, leaving him and Anna completely sealed from the boss fight. But his plans were foiled at least. And here's when things get out of hand. You see, we managed to defeat the big bad evil guy, not kill but defeat, so he once again escapes. But his plans are foiled at least. So then, without knowing, Anna's body had attuned to the artifact. Now attuned characters usually gain some marking in their skin. In the case of Anna's character, it looked like a beautiful tattoo of roses and thorns that went all across his right arm, to his chest and left leg. Needless to say, spotting an artifact user is really easy. So when our character decided to check on Catboy and Anna, Catboy was busy hypnotizing Anna into letting him have his way with Catboy. Anna was super uncomfortable, but Catboy was like, "You are okay with this, right, Anna? There's no problem with this, right?" To which Anna whimpered something along the lines of, yeah, it's fine. Seeing this horrendous display, the DM tried to fast forward past it, but Catboy was not having it, and continued narrating what the characters were doing, basically turning this into an erotic roleplay. I had no words for what I was witnessing, neither did Mark, but Eric was not having it at all. He sighed really hard and began, "Bro, we get it, you're a horny Catboy. You want sex. You want it right now. But can we stop with this shit? You can have all the sex you want with the Dungeon Master right after we're done with the session. Just please, let's not make this any weirder than it is, and carry on with the story. Please, for the love of God, or whatever else you believe in." Catboy was not happy with his erotic roleplay being interrupted, but Eric's rant gave a little spine to the DM, who sighed and said, "Eric's right, stop," and began continuing the story. The characters moved on and started talking about Anna's character as the wielder of the artifact and blah blah blah. The session continues. We get out of the dungeon and heal up from the fight. A couple sessions go by with Catboy's character being extremely hostile suddenly, and out of character audibly hostile too. So Mark Mark, Anna, my character, had this recurring joke when things were stale. They went full dumb mode and shouted humans and decided to do something. So our characters decide that they needed new gear and decide to go on a human-only shopping spree. The Joy and Anna had returned since the incident, and the environment, besides Catboy, had become nice and friendly. But good things aren't forever, and in the session's feedback chat, Catboy dropped another ultimatum, and this time he was very aware of what he was doing. "I'm not muting myself this time," he began. "DM, I'm tired of playing these boring D&D sessions. Mark, Jack, and Eric are very boring people. I demand you kick them out of the next session, and only play with Anna and me from now on." Eric, classic, began. "What are you saying? Are you crazy?" Anna got distressed as Eric's rant went on. Mark and I decided to speak up, saying how that was a horrendous thing to say, even behind our backs. But Catboy was not relenting. "If I see these three next week, I'm ending our relationship," and hung up the DM in his call, kicked us from the D&D server, and blocked us all. A couple weeks went by, no sessions. When I asked, the DM would just tell me, "I don't want to talk about it," at work. We eventually lost our jobs due to corporate BS replacing us with cheaper laborers, and the DM never replied to the messages on WhatsApp again. This was a thing that happened back in 2024, and ever since, no one knows about DM's happenings. Anna left the server by herself after whatever the hell that was, and after that incident, I never got to play another D&D campaign, to the point I just gave up looking for them. The people I tried to join were crazy, and that's the story of how Catboy killed a 5+ year long campaign. Mark and Eric had tried to play some, but it's like Catboy's manipulation and DM's spinelessness left a bad taste in their mouths. Thanks for reading, and I'll keep watching your videos to see who else got the same or worse luck than myself. You along with Den of the Drake, and me just creating characters I'll never use, or what keeps me into the hobby, if that still counts as being in the hobby. I want to thank you for sending in this story. I think if you enjoy the hobby and you just haven't found a table yet, it doesn't mean that you're out of the hobby. This story is really sad to read. The Dungeon Master had a lot of pride in his campaign. Everyone seemed to be having a good time, but unfortunately because they were dating someone truly awful, this long-running campaign came to an end. It's nice to see that Eric spoke up early on, and the rest of the party by the end of it was on their side. When the problem player is dating the Dungeon Master, sadly you get outvoted no matter what. The sad reality is the only way you can guarantee that everyone at the table is someone that you want at the table, you have to be the one that does the inviting. So if you really want to play D&D again, and you're already putting all this legwork into making characters, I feel like it's worth it to take that leap. You might have to ask around, it might have to be over Discord, you might end up having a bad player here and there. I don't think anyone is going to be as bad as Catboy though. And honestly, if anyone even gets remotely close to what Catboy was doing, just ban them from the server. I'm sure the rest of the table will thank you. I think everyone watching this video would agree. I'd love to read everyone's comments below. Thank you again for submitting this at lootgoblinstories@gmail.com. As much as it sucks to hear that the viewers have had bad experiences, it seems like a lot of them are in better situations now. I hope that's the case with you as well. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hype and like it as it really helps the channel grow, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And as always, I hope to see you in the next video. Farewell for now. I wanted to give D&D Dice a shout out, my favorite dice shop and where half of my paycheck goes to every month. They've got a lot of options, including their original 11-piece dice sets that they call the King of Crits series. Be sure to use the code LootGoblin to support the channel at dnddice.com, or you can just click the link down in that video description and it'll be added when you check out with your favorite dice. As an edgelord myself, my favorite collections are the Plague Doctor and Blood Hunter 11-piece sets, which I use alongside their Tomb of the Lich dice tower.